Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51%, a show about women reshaping our world. Coming up, Claudia Sheinbaum becomes Mexico's first ever female president, but the scientist and former Mexico City mayor is facing a host of challenges as the country reels from spiralling violence with drug cartels battling out for influence. Also, the rise of the child-free woman and the need to celebrate women's choices as opposed to condemning them. I'll be talking shortly to Dr Caroline Magennis, who's written a book on that very subject. And meet a rare breed, the French women deep-sea divers who are plunging to new depths and breaking barriers as a result. She's blazed a trail and marked some important firsts for Mexico. The first woman head of state and the first academic to lead the nation. Yet, as we have reported, Claudia Sheinbaum will have her work cut out for her when it comes to dealing with endemic corruption and the drug cartel violence that's engulfed the country in recent years, not to mention sky-high femicide rates. Olivia Salazar-Winspear has more.
To the cries of Presidenta, Claudia Sheinbaum takes the stage, pledging to build on the achievements of her mentor, outgoing President Andrés Manuel López Obrador.
We will respect the freedom of businesses. With honesty, we will promote and facilitate private, national and foreign investments which promote well-being and regional development, always ensuring that there's respect for the environment.
Unsurprisingly, the former energy scientist has campaigned on a platform of ecologically minded development, starting her political career at Mexico City's municipality and foregoing the academic path that could have been hers. A rise to the top that's been attributed to an extremely popular president incumbent whose party line she embraced almost to the letter.
She has been so obedient with President Obrador that it gave her the presidency.
Yet that loyalty to his policies are a cause for concern in some corners. His 6 years in office have been the most violent in Mexico's modern history, and this election season has been marred by dozens of killings, some of which are believed to be politically motivated and carried out by the powerful cartels which operate across the country. Sheinbaum has named security a priority, yet untangling the murky ties between cartel leaders, business figures and indeed politicians is set to be a major, if not insurmountable, challenge for her over the next 6 years.
Now, among policymakers and business leaders, little attention appears to be being paid to one of the fastest growing demographics, women who are choosing not to have children. As the intro to Harpy, a manifesto for child-free women, states, we continue to live in a society where women are often judged for deciding to remain childless. And I'm delighted to say I'm joined now by Dr Caroline Magennis, an academic from Salford University in the UK, and who is the author of said book. Thank you so much for your time. Your book is far from being an academic text. Instead, it's a very personal book which celebrates women who have chosen to be child-free. But firstly, for those who don't know, what exactly is a harpy?
Harpy is a word that's often used against women, and often used against women in a very emotional, emotive way, just to denigrate women really and their choices. But the way in which it is used in the media, it doesn't chime with my experience. It doesn't chime with the experience of most of the women without children that I know. So I also love the idea of really leaning into this as a stereotype, because a harpy, this term comes from this figure from history and mythology that is this sort of scary bird woman figure that we have in most cultures on the edge of society, threatening our sense of ourselves and the nuclear family. And the idea that child-free women had been constructed as these monstrous figures in literature and popular culture, and how those messages get handed down and get, the way in which they're given back to us. I just sort of wanted to satirize it, lean into it, and sort of reclaim some of the power from the way that we're usually talked about in culture.
Yet, Caroline, to this very day, we still condemn those who've made that choice. Why do you think that's the case?
Yeah, so often we have these big, broader narratives in culture, and we have them, circulated in everywhere from newspaper headlines to the idea of the trope of the hardworking family that many of our politicians use. But this isn't the way that most of us interact with each other in real life. We talk to our friends, we talk to our family. Some people are accepting of each other's choices and some aren't. Part of what I set out to do with this book was to bring those much more nuanced, rich conversations that we have among friends into the mainstream. I think for many years, people just didn't know what to do with people who refused to have children. But actually, throughout history, people have made this decision, have lived this lifestyle. And I think it's just a good time now to think about how we might contribute to the societies in which we live.
What motivated you to write the book?
Yeah, so it was the book that I maybe would have needed about 10 years ago, whenever I was sort of scared and confused about how I felt about my life. I think when women are in their 30s, there's so much surveillance. People keep telling us things about our own decisions and our own bodies as if they'd never occurred to us. So there was just constant questions and scrutiny and are you sure you'll change your mind? All of those questions. And I really internalized a lot of the stigma of being repeatedly asked those questions. Now, lots of people might be more confident, might be more extroverted and just tell people, their decision right from the start. But I didn't feel confident enough to do that when I was in my 30s. So I sort of wanted a book that would tell people that I'm not trying to convert anyone, but if this is the path that they've chosen, that there is a way forward and a future. A lot of the women that I spoke to were women, older than me, women in their 50s, 60s and 70s who didn't voice any regret at all for the way that they'd lived their lives. So I wanted people who have made this decision in the fullness of their adult minds to know that there is a really hopeful future out there.
Society to this very day still portrays childless women as either embittered spinsters or child-free women as being very selfish individuals. What is it going to take to change those stereotypes?
I think you're absolutely right. And that's something I explore in the book, where there seem to be these two polarities. On one side, there's, the sort of the sad, lonely cat lady figure who has, this is how you'll end up. And, she's sort of like this bogey woman, don't end up like her. And then you have the sort of the careerist, Sex and the City, high-heeled version as well. Most of us aren't like that. Most of us are just doing our jobs, contributing in my and the case of other people, teaching other people's children. And the idea that we're just sort of getting on with things, doing our taxes, putting out the bins, living our lives. It's just very different to this message that we get that is it's very polarized. And then these are the messages that begin to circulate around that we are selfish, that we are self-absorbed, when quite often women without children and without partners contribute more in their communities in terms of help with mutual aid schemes, in terms of volunteering. But that contribution is just not really appreciated and can often be really marginalised.
Caroline Magennis, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks again so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Now, the world of diving has historically been dominated by men, yet recently more and more women have entered the realm. Still, out of France's 1,500 professional deep-sea divers, there are just only 5 women. Our colleagues at France 2 went to meet one of those who's plunging to great depths.
Pression 180.
Checking everything one more time. Geraldine Paradis knows it's better to be safe than sorry before going into the water. Her hard hat diver suit weighs 34 kilos and wasn't made with the few women in the profession in mind.
It's not exactly roomy. You can say you feel it's true that the equipment is a little heavy, especially since I have a small frame.
Of France's 1,500 deep-sea divers, just 5 are women. Paradis dives down to workstations 20, 30, sometimes 50 meters below sea level. attached to the surface thanks to this cumbersome umbilical cord that allows her to breathe and communicate. She walks underwater like an astronaut on the moon to sites that require repairs like oil rigs or other submerged equipment. A passion the Marseille native wants to pass on to her students, along with skills like precision and clear thinking in complex situations.
You did well. You stayed calm. You observed the site.
Being a woman in a man's environment meant the path wasn't always easy.
I remember one time an employer told me to stay underwater. I had already finished the job, but he tells me to stay underwater because a client was with him. I said, okay, but I'm done. No, you're a girl. I don't want to lose this contract. I didn't say anything on site, but when I got home, I sat in a corner and cried because what he said really hurt me.
And then there's the technical, physical part of being a deep-sea diver. Parody learned the ins and outs of concrete, welding, cutting with a blowtorch at 5,000 degrees centigrade.
You have to stay concentrated because you've got a blowtorch in your hands. You could cut a finger off and not even feel it. It's going to cauterize immediately. And then there are explosions because gas pockets can form, especially if the environment is confined.
Her next goal, saturation diving, one of the most dangerous jobs in the world that calls for divers to acclimate to normal pressure levels over several days. If she succeeds, she'll be the first French woman to venture into very deep waters using a hard hat diver suit.
And that's all for this edition. Apologies for the croaky voice. It's the tail end of laryngitis. So until our next show, bye for now.